What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today, we're going to be continuing our 2022 NFL Hall of Fame week as we discuss the first of two player bios for this week. This video will be focusing on Terrell Owens. Now, Owens is one of the more talented players to step foot on a gridiron in the 21st century. However, due to some antics both on and off the field, he was not a first ballot Hall of Famer. This video is going to be discussing his life and his career as an NFL player. So without further ado, let's begin. Terrell Owens was born on December 7th, 1973 in Alexander City, Alabama. Now, Owens had a bit of a rough time growing up, as his mom gave birth to him when she was only 17 years old, and he did not know his father's identity until he was 10. This left Owens in the care of his grandmother for most of the time. Eventually, his mom did get enough money and purchased a new house, but she decided to take her other three children, not Terrell. This left Terrell to live with his grandma. And as a child, Owens loved watching sports, particularly football. His favorite player was Jerry Rice. And while he wanted to play sports, his grandmother would not allow him to, as she feared for his safety. By the time he got into high school, his grandmother kind of relented and allowed him to play sports. He responded by joining the school's football, baseball, basketball, and track teams. Now, while he was talented, he was also extremely raw. He did not play an actual football game until his junior year of high school. Now, after graduating, Owens was recruited to play football and basketball for the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, which we will call UTC from here on out. Throughout his time in college, he mainly focused on football. However, he did play some basketball as well, and he did appear in a single minute during the 1995 NCAA tournament for UTC. But he mostly spent his 4 years at college as a reserve off the bench for basketball. Now, for football, his freshman season was more or less a redshirt season. He did become a starter as a sophomore, and he played well. While the stats were not all that impressive, he was facing double coverages, and he was still rather raw. Now, as a senior, he recorded 43 catches, which was the UTC record for receptions in a single season until 2007. After his senior season came to an end, Owens declared for the 1996 NFL Draft. Now, two problems hurt his draft stock. The first, he was still very raw. And the second, he played at an FCS school that did not play all that well, which limited the amount of tape that, people would actually go there to watch him play, so scouts didn't have as much tape. And this hurt him because it's like, all right, we don't know if he's really good and just raw or if he put up good stats against bad teams. So entering the draft, he was viewed as a high-risk, high-reward type of pick. During the 1996 draft, with the 89th overall selection, Terrell Owens was selected by the San Francisco 49ers. Now, this was a dream come true for Terrell, as he was now on the same team as his idol, Jerry Rice, and another former top pick at receiver, J.J. Stokes. Now, Owens would begin his rookie season as a special teams player, but he became a starter by week 7 after Stokes got hurt. Unfortunately for him, he did fail to dominate, but he put up solid numbers, recording 35 catches for 520 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, in 1997, Owens was once more moved to a backup role, but Jerry Rice would tear his ACL in the first game of the season, which opened the door for T.O. to get the starts. He ended the year with 15 starts, and he received over 100 targets for the first time in his career. He did catch 60 passes for 936 yards and 8 touchdowns. Now, he played respectably during the 49ers playoff push, as he would catch 10 passes for 149 yards and a single touchdown across 2 games. Now, with that strong season, Owens earned himself the second starting spot next to Jerry Rice entering the 1998 season. And Owens proved the 49ers' faith in him to be right in that 98 season. He would record 67 receptions for 1,097 yards and 14 touchdowns. And for the heck of it, he added another touchdown on a run. Now, during the team's 2-game playoff appearance, Owens played well. He would catch 11 passes for 146 yards and a touchdown. Now, that touchdown was crucial, as it helped San Francisco end a 5-game losing streak against the Green Bay Packers, with 3 of those losses coming in the playoffs. This catch is amazing. I would definitely recommend looking it up. as it was given the nickname the Catch 2, and it put an end to an otherwise forgetful, rough game for Owens. Now, unfortunately, in 1999, Owens regressed, although the 49ers as a whole did, so it wasn't just Terrell. So, basically, he would catch 60 passes for 754 yards and only 4 touchdowns. But this would end up being Steve Young's last year as he would retire. Now, Jeff Garcia would step up to be the quarterback for San Francisco. And Garcia quickly made Terrell Owens his wide receiver 1. In the year 2000, Owens responded with a great year. He would catch 97 passes for a career-high 1,451 yards and 13 touchdowns. Now, it should be noted that this stat line was partially bolstered by an amazing Week 17 performance in which Terrell broke an NFL record with 20 catches. Now, this record has since been broken by Brandon Marshall, but it showed the amount of potential that Owens had. Owens did have one of his first incidences occur, though, on September 24th of the year 2000. In a heavily televised game against the Dallas Cowboys, Owens scored a touchdown. And after he scored it, he sprinted to the Cowboys logo at midfield, and he quote-unquote claimed it for the 49ers. What he did is he essentially spiked the football in the middle of the field. He marked it right smack dab in the middle of the star. Obviously, this wasn't anything. And this upset the Cowboys fans and players. While he was not attempting to taunt or disrespect anyone, at least according to him, the Cowboys and their fan base saw it completely differently. Cowboys legend Emmitt Smith scored a touchdown later in the game, and he ran the ball to midfield and spiked it exactly where Terrell Owens had to reclaim the logo. Now, Owens proceeded to catch another touchdown. And guess what he did? He ran right down to midfield, and right when he went to put the ball on midfield, Cowboys safety George Teague met him there. So, as he attempted to place the ball down, Teague hit him and caused Owens to fall. Now, it should be noted that Owens had been messing with Teague earlier in the game, and he had actually pancaked him earlier in the game, which had caused Teague to be extremely frustrated. He was not having a good game, Terrell Owens was. So, as a result, after this hit, Teague would be ejected from the game, and Owens, he didn't get in trouble with the NFL, but his head coach did suspend him for a single game, as he felt that Owens' behavior was unacceptable, and he was putting himself before the team. So, interesting side note, I do have a couple of friends who went to this game. They remember that moment. So, kind of cool. Now, after 2000, Jerry Rice left the 49ers, leaving Terrell Owens as the unquestioned wide receiver 1 in San Francisco. Now, Owens had a career year in the year 2001, as he would record 93 receptions for 1,412 yards and a career-best 16 touchdowns. Now, his touchdown total accounted for half of Jeff Garcia's passing touchdowns on the year, further cementing T.O.'s role as the undoubted wide receiver 1 in San Fran. Now, his play did fade in the playoffs, however, as he would only catch 4 passes for 40 yards in a single game. Now, 2002 would be a good year for him. He would record a career-best 100 receptions that year, while adding 1,300 yards and 13 touchdowns. This marked the second year in a row where Owens led the league in receiving touchdowns. And this was despite the fact that he had actually missed a pair of games due to injury. This year, though, saw yet another controversial moment in T.O.'s career. In a game on October 14th, Owens would score a touchdown. He proceeded to take out a Sharpie, sign the football, and give the ball to a fan who happened to be Owens' financial advisor. He faced no punishment for this, but the NFL did implement a new rule banning players from using, quote, foreign objects, end quote, on the field. So, basically, because of T.O., we got other moments where players would try to bring out a Sharpie or a cell phone, for example, and they would get flagged for that. So, thanks, T.O., for that rule. Now, Owens had a career postseason that year. He set his career marks in catches with 13, targets with 21, yards with 212, and touchdowns with 2. Now, after this year, in a somewhat surprising move, the 49ers would fire their head coach. This move proved to be a big mistake for the 49ers as the team regressed, as did Owens, in part because the team was struggling. He ended the 03 campaign with 80 catches for 1,102 yards and 9 touchdowns. Now, with the new management, new coaching staff in place, Terrell Owens wanted out of San Francisco after the 2003 season. However, he was technically still under contract, but this situation got really messy really fast. Owens and his agent had claimed that they had opted out of the contract, but the 49ers said that the agent had missed the deadline to opt out of the contract. As a result, Owens responded and reacted as if he was an unrestricted free agent. The 49ers acted like he was still on their team. So Owens would sign a free agency deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. However, the 49ers, who thought that they'd still had him under contract, traded him to the Baltimore Ravens. Now, after about 2 weeks, this controversy was put to rest when the Eagles traded a draft pick to San Francisco and one to Baltimore. To free up the deal, be like, all right, tell you what, just to clear this out so we don't have to go to court, we'll just give away draft picks to each of you guys. That way everyone's happy. We get T.O., he gets the contract he wants, you get a draft pick, you get a draft pick. So, yeah, it was interesting. Now, this freed up Terrell Owens to officially sign with the Eagles, giving them a true wide receiver one. Now, if you're interested, we did actually do a trade breakdown of this trade, the Terrell Owens trade. It will be linked in the description below. Now, unfortunately for Terrell, controversy followed Owens to Philadelphia. Now, during the summer of 2004, Owens gave an interview with Playboy magazine. In this interview, he essentially stated that his former teammate, Jeff Garcia, was a homosexual. Now, obviously, first things first, it's never a good idea for an active NFL player to give an interview with Playboy. I mean, that should be common sense. But it's not a good idea to go out and say something about a teammate like that either. It doesn't make sense to go out and stir up a controversy for no reason like that. So, yeah. Now, this just kind of made Owens look like a little more iffy, especially in 2004, saying something like that. I mean, so on the field in 2004, he started to display great chemistry with Donovan McNabb, as he would record 77 catches for 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns over 14 starts. However, during that 14th game, Owens suffered a severely sprained ankle and fractured fibula after Dallas safety Roy Williams delivered a dirty horse collar tackle. Now, Owens would have to undergo surgery for this injury. And despite the loss of their top receiver, the Eagles did manage to advance to Super Bowl 39. And Owens defied what his doctors asked him, and he returned to play in that big game. And he showed up. He recorded 9 catches for 122 yards in the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, Owens and the Eagles would go on to lose the game, but not because of what Terrell did. He just showed that he was a great player. Now, after the game, Owens basically said that the media would have called Brett Favre a warrior for playing with such an injury, but that, quote, for me, they said I was selfish, end quote. So again, another little jab, but nothing crazy. Now, in April of 2005, Owens would hire a new agent and publicly stated that he wanted to renegotiate his contract with the Eagles. Most of his contract was based on bonuses, and his base salary did not have him as one of the top 10 receivers in the league. He also said that he, quote, wasn't the guy who got tired in the Super Bowl, end quote, taking a jab at McNabb. Oddly enough, Owens wanted to play in the NBA's Summer League for the Sacramento Kings. Now, the Eagles said, you're coming off a serious injury, we don't want to risk that, so they rejected his request. Now, Owens, as a result, he was already upset with the team, so he threatened to hold out at training camp if the Eagles did not give him a new deal. But Andy Reid, being Andy Reid, refused. He stood firm. Owens still reported to camp on time. Now, after a loss in 2005 at the Cowboys, Owens was spotted wearing a Michael Irvin throwback jersey, getting onto the Eagles team plane. Very odd. A month later, he would get into a fistfight with his teammate, Hugh Douglas. Douglas had said that, quote, there were players on this team faking injuries, end quote, and Owens felt that this was a shot at him. On the next day, Owens gave an interview with ESPN. During this interview, he essentially said that if Brett Favre was the quarterback in Philly, the Eagles would be undefeated. This, of course, was another shot at McNabb, or at least it was taken as one, but Owens later stated that his comments were taken out of context. Andy Reid decided that enough was enough, and he suspended Owens for conduct detrimental to the team, and he demanded that Terrell publicly apologize to McNabb. Now, he read an apology of sorts on TV, but he never specifically addressed McNabb. Andy Reid, as a result, decided to suspend Owens for 4 games and said that he would be a healthy scratch after the suspension was over. On November 8th, Owens gave his infamous press conference while working out in his driveway. During this press conference, he would apologize to the team, the fans, the rest of his teammates, and of course, he finally acknowledged Donovan McNabb and apologized to him by name. After, he did ask to be reinstated. The Eagles said no. Enough was enough. Andy Reid's Andy Reid. Through 7 games, Owens had recorded 47 catches for 763 yards and 6 touchdowns. But after the 2005 season, Owens' chapter in Philadelphia came to an end as he was released by the team. 4 days after being released by Philadelphia, Owens would sign a deal with the arch-rival Dallas Cowboys. On paper, this came as a bit of a surprise and a backstab to both Philadelphia and San Francisco, as both teams had viewed Dallas as their biggest rival at that point in time. But this is Terrell Owens. He had problems with both San Francisco and Philadelphia, so he chose to join their biggest rival. Now, week 4 saw Dallas go to Philadelphia, and the fans were not happy with him as they booed him relentlessly. Owens managed to catch 3 passes for 45 yards in that game, but he was playing with a broken finger. And there's, of course, videos in this game where after the Eagles scored, Owens is chanting, the EAGLES chant with them. He's singing Fly Eagles Fly with them, so he's just having fun. Now, in a late season game against Atlanta, Owens upset cornerback D'Angelo Hall after allegedly spitting in his face. Now, Owens did not deny doing it, but, it's Hall. He said that Hall was talking a lot of trash. So they resolved the situation a few days later, but it didn't reflect well on Owens. Now, despite playing through a broken finger and tendon damage in said finger that would eventually require surgery, Owens had a strong first year in Dallas. He would record 85 catches for 1,180 yards and a league-best 13 touchdowns. But 2007 proved to be an even better season for Owens and the Cowboys. Now, on November 18th of that year, Owens would tie a franchise record by catching 4 touchdowns. He ended the year with 81 receptions for 1,355 yards and a franchise record 15 touchdowns in a season. Now, Owens had suffered a high ankle sprain in a Week 16 game, which held him out for Week 17. But still, Dallas would go on to win the NFC's top seed, but they were upset in the divisional round of the playoffs. In that game, Owens had 49 yards and a touchdown on 4 catches. After the game, he broke down and cried. So, definitely an emotional man. Now, Terrell had another solid season in 2008, as he would catch 69 passes for 1,052 yards and 10 touchdowns. After the season, he was released by Dallas. Now, somewhat recently, he did go out and he said he still doesn't understand why the Cowboys released him after the season. Really, it's been something that I've always kind of questioned myself too. So it was one of those weird moves where no one really understood why Dallas cut him. Salary, there haven't been any off-the-field concerns recently. He hadn't been doing anything crazy. So it's just kind of a head-scratcher. Now, 4 days after his stint in Dallas came to an end, he signed a deal with the Buffalo Bills. During his time in Buffalo, he really started to show his age. He finished the year with 55 receptions for 829 yards and 5 touchdowns. But he did add a rushing touchdown, so there's that. Now, after this season, Owens went unsigned for a while, until the Cincinnati Bengals decided to take a chance on the 37-year-old when they signed him to a 1-year deal in July of 2010. Owens had been recruited to join the Bengals by fellow wide receiver Chad Johnson, then known as Chad Ochocinco, and quarterback Carson Palmer. Now, he actually had a pretty strong season, recording 72 catches for 983 yards and 9 touchdowns. All of those stats would lead the Bengals on the season. However, the team struggled, and Owens had actually ended the year on the IR due to a left knee injury. During the offseason, Owens, who was a free agent, tore his ACL while working out. Now, while he was ready to play by late October, no NFL team had interest in signing him. He would eventually join the Allen Wranglers of the Indoor Football League for the winter of 2012, but he was released by the team due to a lack of effort. In early August of 2012, Owens would sign a deal with the Seattle Seahawks. However, he would fail to make the team out of training camp. And although he did not officially retire, his playing days were done. At least in the NFL. at least for now, ? So, in 2017, he took part in the inaugural game of the American Flag Football League. In June of 2018, Owens was added to the negotiations list for the Canadian Football League's Edmonton Eskimos. However, they did not offer him a deal. And with that, his playing days were quote-unquote officially over, at least as far as we know. Probably. Get to that in a minute. So, actually, we'll get to that right now. So, in 2021, after the Bucs suffered some injuries to the wide receiving core and we had the whole Antonio Brown situation, Owens publicly stated that he wanted to join the Buccaneers and he still had a lot to give. Nobody really took this seriously, but it shows that he still has heart and soul in the game and he still wants to play if he can. So there's that. Anyways, let's talk about his accomplishments in the NFL. So he has an impressive list of accomplishments. He is the only player in league history to have scored a touchdown against every other team, not including quarterbacks. So he's actually scored at least 2 touchdowns against every team as well, which is pretty notable. He is also the only player in NFL history to have 800-plus yard receiving seasons with at least 5 different teams. And he is the oldest player to record 200-plus yards from scrimmage in a single game. He is tied with multiple other players for having the record for most consecutive seasons scoring at least 5 touchdowns, which was 11 seasons. He owns the league record for most consecutive seasons with at least 4 touchdowns at 15, and he is tied with Tony Gonzalez for most consecutive seasons with at least 700 receiving yards with 15. He also has franchise records for all 5 NFL teams he officially played for, so not counting Seattle. For the 49ers, he has the most receiving yards and receptions in a single game. For the Eagles, he has the most receiving touchdowns in a single season and the most receiving yards per game in a single season. For the Cowboys, he has the highest average receiving yards per game, and he is tied for the most consecutive games with a receiving touchdown, as well as most touchdown receptions in a single game. For the Bills, he has the longest reception, 98 yards, and longest play after scrimmage. And lastly, for the Bengals, he has the most combined yards from scrimmage in a single game by a player over the age of 30. Now, outside of the accomplishments and team records and all that, he was a 5-time first-team All-Pro, a 6-time Pro Bowler, and he led the league in receiving touchdowns 3 times. He is also a member of the NFL 2000s All-Decade Team, the San Francisco 49ers Hall of Fame, and the NFL Hall of Fame. Owens' induction into the Hall of Fame seemed like a sure thing, but he had to wait until his 3rd time on the ballot to be inducted. This was, of course, mostly due to his off-the-field and on-field antics, but while his play on the field left him ranked near the top for most statistical categories, many voters, like I said, were turned off by his antics. Now, Owens had one last hurrah during the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, as he decided to skip the NFL's official celebration, instead going to his old college, UTC. To this day, he's the only inductee, who is of course alive, to skip the induction ceremony. So there's that. Now, Owens, there's another little controversy, I guess you could say, that came up very recently, where someone tweeted and said, who was the bigger diva, Terrell Owens or Antonio Brown? And Owens kind of said, man, you've been drinking the Kool-Aid. There's no competition. Clearly saying AB's the bigger drama queen, but I mean, neither here nor there. Now, Owens was also known for other things outside of his football career and off-field interviews. In the movie Any Given Sunday, Owens would appear on the field as himself. VH1 also produced a show called The T.O. Show in the year 2009. This show would air for 3 seasons and focused on Owens' life both on and off the field. He also participated in shows such as The Apprentice and Dancing with the Stars. Shortly after the 2004 season began, Owens would release a book titled Catch This, Going Deep with the NFL's Sharpest Weapon. Now, Terrell Owens is one of the best wide receivers in NFL history, although controversy always seemed to follow him wherever he went. He spent 15 years across the NFL, playing for 5 different teams, and he set multiple NFL records, but notably for him, he never won a Super Bowl. And I'm sure he regrets that, but there's nothing he can do. He did it all in the one Super Bowl he got to play in. So this was the Terrell Owens player bio. Terrell Owens, of course, I did have a TO jersey growing up, so there's that. But Owens is just one of the bigger names in NFL history. If you're a football fan, you know who Terrell Owens is, that's for sure. If you're a casual fan, you know who TO is. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this. This was a Terrell Owens player bio as part of the 2022 NFL Hall of Fame week. So have a good rest of your day. Stay safe out there. And if you're a Eagles fan, fly Eagles fly. If you're not, well, who knows? Have a good rest of your day.